what makes someone remarkable? Do you mind being described as the white people whisperer? What is the optimal age to get married?
That year was the first year that we ever heard a teacher talk about race.
Is the college application process fair?
You start to find the non-obvious way kind of works.
Is there like a cartoonist community? So many times when we go live with these things, it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom.
Boom.
Happy Monday, non-obvious nation. That is a little unusual to say because usually it is happy Thursday, but right now it is Monday and it is one of my favorite Mondays because it's the Monday after the big game, the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl is not just the Super Bowl of football, but it's also the Super Bowl of marketing and advertising because we get to see ads that cost over $5 million to air. And therefore they must be X% better than every other ad that has ever aired, right? Well, maybe not. Right now, during this show, we are going to consult a panel of experts to talk about the absolute best and the absolute worst of Super Bowl marketing this year. And I am so excited about this topic because A, I love marketing, and B, I have a panel of experts who are similarly geeked out by marketing to the degree that they're probably annoying to all of their friends and family around them because they're so hyper-focused on the advertising and the marketing as opposed to anything else. But this is what we do. This is what we love. And what we're going to break down in this show is not the most popular ads. That's what pretty much everybody talks about. When you see the USA Today ad meter results of like the favorite ads of the week of the Super Bowl, those are based on people saying, well, did I laugh or did I not laugh? Was it funny or was it not? Was it entertaining? Did it make me cry? Those are the things that people tend to look at with Super Bowl ads. But in this show, we are going to talk about a lot of the other things that matter for Super Bowl ads. For example, was it strategic? Did it actually make sense? Was it worth it? Was it worth the money that people paid in order to get that ad in front of millions and millions of households? Were these ads reflective of our culture? Were they diverse and inclusive in a way that we would like to see moving forward into the culture that we want to build? And most of all, were they great strategic ads? Were they strategic? Did they actually make a difference? Did they move the needle for the brands? So the USA Today ad meter is one of the most widely read ways of gauging whether an ad was valuable. And let's take a look at that ad meter and see what was the most popular ad of the week. And according to the USA Today ad meter, there's actually two ads from the same advertiser that rank number 1 and number 2, which is the Rocket Mortgage ad featuring Tracy Morgan. So let me bring in my entire panel and introduce them, and then we're going to jump into a conversation about all of these ads, starting with Rocket Mortgage. And my first guest, directly to my left on screen, is Gavin Blowy, who is a longtime Super Bowl marketer. This is one of the first years, he said, that he has not been working on a Super Bowl ad, but he has worked with Pepsi, he's worked with Coke, he was working with the Oreo team behind that famous dunking in the dark tweet. He is a very, very well-versed Super Bowl marketer, and he is going to share his perspective. So welcome, Gavin. Nice to have you.
Thank you very much, Rohit. Great to be here.
Great to have you, as well as Kenny Tacker, who is a marketing and brand specialist, but also focuses in the world of diversity and inclusion. He's done some amazing work. His bio is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend you check him out and all of the work he's doing. And he's going to focus in our conversation on whether these ads were reflective of our culture, whether they were diverse and inclusive, and what more they need to do if they weren't. So I actually don't know, Kenny, what you're going to say or what your perspective is, but I'm looking forward to hearing it. So welcome to the show.
It won't be popular, but you know, I'm happy to be here. And hey, Morgan,
hey, perfect setup. I love that.
I just realized Morgan is one of my clients, but
oh, okay, all right. So perhaps not after the show, but you know, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, she still will be.
Listen, maybe you'll pick up like 4 more clients after the show, so then it'll all equalize itself out, and it'll be good.
We're working on it. We're working on it, right, Morgan?
Absolutely.
Love that. And we've got, you know, a listener from Portugal, so maybe you'll pick up some worldwide clients while you're there. My good friend Shiv Singh, who has done many things. He's been at Pepsi for a long time. He was at many other companies. He's on a corporate board, and now he's got a new role as the SVP and GM at Expedia Group. And he's the author of a wonderful book along with his wife called Savvy, Navigating Fake Companies, Fake Leaders, and Fake News. I think I got the title right, or it was close to that title, right? I should know because we've published it. But welcome, Shiv. Nice to see you, as always.
Thank you, Rohit, and great to be on. And you did great for the title.
Awesome. I'm glad, because if I screwed that up, that'd be really bad news.
It would be worrying.
Yeah, I know. All right. And next we have Morgan Kelly, who is the president of DeMassimo. What is the full? I know the Digo, but like what the
Massimo
Go is
Goldstein.
DeMassimo Goldstein. Okay.
Yes.
See, I know
Digo
DeMassimo.
sounds a little less like a law firm, so.
Yeah, I know, but I know half of the firm, so I knew the DeMassimo part because I know Mark, but not the other part. But welcome. She is an expert in brand marketing strategy. She is in the agency world, has worked with a ton of clients, and is going to be absolutely perfect to talk about some of the brand strategy. So welcome, Morgan. Nice to have you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we have a stacked house, and we have my other good friend, David Berkowitz, who is an absolute legend in the world of marketing. If you read about any insights or articles in, I think it was like Adweek, Ad Age, like whatever the ad publication is, David has published something there. He is a prolific writer. He's a prolific thinker, and he has been in this world. He's one of the marketing OGs that has been around for a long time. And up until now, we only really ever run into each other. I think it's CES, right? That's where we always like run into each other and then grab a drink randomly because we just happen to be walking by each other.
Well, and your book launch parties. So those are fun.
Yes, that's right. My book launch parties. Thank you. So welcome to you as well. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
All right. So now we want to jump into Super Bowl marketing ads and Super Bowl marketing strategy. And let's start with apparently the number one brand, which is Rocket Mortgage. And I'm not sure if we have the ad teed up here, but maybe we could show the ad that was judged by the USA Today meter as the number one best ad of the Super Bowl.
Can we even afford this house?
I'm pretty sure we can.
Pretty sure. With Rocket Mortgage, you can be certain. Not pretty sure.
What's the difference?
Let me show you. I'm pretty sure these aren't poisonous. I'm pretty sure these are parachutes.
Mine has the sandwich.
That's mine. I'm pretty sure you do not run. I'm pretty sure you could take Batista down.
You're on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is trending.
I'm pretty sure these Hornets aren't the murdering type. I'm pretty sure we can make it.
Certain is better.
Let's go with certain.
Good choice.
When you're buying a home, pretty sure isn't sure enough. When you need to be certain about how much home you can afford, Rocket can.
Hi, neighbor. I'll hold the dog.
Not again.
I'm pretty sure our panel is going to have some awesome thoughts about this ad. And Gavin, I want to start with you because you have actually worked on Super Bowl ads in the past and been a strategist behind them. And so I wonder if you could share your perspective on whether you think that is a good use of money and a good ad, and B, what actually, just take people behind the scenes for most of us who haven't worked on a Super Bowl, like what actually happens to get an ad that is going to be a Super Bowl ad to the air.
Sure. Well, again, thank you very much for weighing in here. First of all, I'm a big fan of Tracy Morgan. So him as the center of that with a very simple strategy line is arguably you're more than halfway there, right? The simple benefit of the brand, the idea that he can then pay it off in humorous ways. I thought it was great. I personally, and I know everything is going to be controversial in the world of opinion, but I'm not sure I would have put that in the top. And honestly, the perspective is that man just was in a major car accident and almost died. The idea that they cut from him going sideways into an open bridge and nobody thought that was a bad idea in the pitch, let alone the shoot, let alone final cut. That's where I just have heart murmurs because on some level, having been with, a lot of different Super Bowl executions, I am very privileged to say I started off at BBDO on the flagship Pepsi brand. You talk about drawing all of the cards in the universe. That one was more powerful and more rare than anyone I could have imagined, right? And the idea that we're now sitting in the rooms with the Phil Duesenberrys, the Roger Enricos, the Michael Pattys, the Ted Sands, the guys who made these big ads every year. This felt like that in a lot of ways, right? High production value, a lot of borrowed equity, great storytelling and writing. Again, there's a lot of technical aspects to this as well. But in the overall, kind of story of it, I wish the brand was a little bit more center. I got lost in Tracy's anecdotes, and I don't know that I would go back to the benefit of Rocket Mortgage being as simple or as easy as much as the strategy said that to me directly in the first 5 seconds, which again, in the world of advertising, you can show your strategy, but very often you don't, unless you're, very much just, kind of hitting it on the nose. But I thought it was very good overall. I don't know that I would have said it was number one.
Yeah. And one of the things that you point out, which is really interesting about this is, an ad, oftentimes, especially a Super Bowl ad, will have a interesting storyline, an interesting tagline, but does it actually remind you of the brand, or could it have worked for any brand? If you look at one of the other really popular ads, which was Amazon's Alexa ad featuring Michael B. Jordan, that ad had a great storyline, and it seemed designed to appeal to a certain audience, but was it strategic for Alexa? And did it make sense for them? So Morgan, maybe I'll turn to you for this one. And hopefully you can talk about Amazon and they're not a client, but what did you think about this one? And what did you think overall about the game as well?
The game was great. I think,
I meant the ads in the game, by the way. So we don't care about the football game. No, that's not important.
I was very happy about the winner though. I think the Alexa ad was really interesting because it was really entertaining. A lot of colleagues that I spoke to after the fact, everybody really was drawn to that one. And when you look at who was posting about it, everybody's talking about how it was one of the best ads. It felt a little simple to me, to be honest. I don't think it really tied back other than the packaging. But again, if you're a brand and you want to be associated with our packaging is as beautiful as Michael B. Jordan, not the worst example.
He's pretty beautiful. Yeah.
And I always love a cross reference as well. The fact that they brought in the show that actually is on Amazon. So I thought that was interesting, but it was enjoyable. It didn't seem like it was the most challenging in terms of strategic ads to uncover. It was pretty straightforward and maybe, to Gavin's point, a little bit on the nose, but it was enjoyable overall.
Okay. Well, another ad that got some significant buzz ahead of the game was M&M, the M&M spot. And part of the reason it got a lot of buzz is because they revealed it, or at least a trailer for it, in a Zoom call, which was such a 2020/2021 way to do that. So David, I want to bring you into this because I'm guessing you're probably familiar with sort of the launch strategy that they did, because it was all over the marketing trades. Was that a smart thing to do? And what did you think about that ad and the ads overall in the game?
Well, it's fun. It's fun with the M&M's ad. I think having that kind of teaser, trying to figure out one of the things that brands have been wrestling with for the past 10, 15 years is especially as social media scaled and YouTube was really YouTube basically now like a 15-year-old product. It's how much do you tease? How much do you just give away the farm in advance? I like the fact that this year I intentionally didn't watch many of the ads at all going into this. I wanted that moment of surprise and just to piss off my family and say, no, really, stop like asking for snacks and microwaving shit. I'm watching the ads.
I know it's hard. They keep talking.
There were a couple of these things that I had to have a note like, okay, fine, I'll rewatch this after the game. So yeah, M&M had a fun twist to it. Like I think one of the really interesting distinctions to point out, and the Alexa versus Rocket Mortgage, really good example of this, and I like the fact that they both rose to the top, is if you look at challenger brands versus the established brands, right? Like so Amazon can throw whatever money they want at it. It's about brand favorability. It's about shareholders. They show that they're the big dog in this fight. They've got one of the most popular actors and most talented actors of his generation. So I can watch Michael B. Jordan in anything, let alone an ad. Amazing, right? And then you have Rocket Mortgage, which they've been doing this for a few years, but they're still they're not the household name. They're not even someone like QuickBooks, something like that. So to pay off something that I think they managed to strike this terrific balance where they've got to get product consumption based on it. They've got to get signups for people that come into their app. So like Alexa doesn't, Amazon doesn't need more sales for Alexa. Rocket Mortgage does. They've got to work harder. And the fact that they could be entertaining, good enough, even at Gavin's point, if they could made that payoff a bit stronger, but they're keeping the conversations going, and then they can keep building on this in day 2 and 3 and month 2 and 3 beyond this, then those are very different strategies, and they're going to be judged by different measures.
Yeah, it's a great point. And what's interesting when we think about and look at some of the ads that rose to the top, at least in opinion, is the people who were starring in them. And one of the other ads that rose to the top was a much more emotional spot from Toyota that featured Paralympian Jessica Long, who's got this amazing story of being adopted, and then she has competed as a professional swimmer, even though she had both of her legs amputated. And that was meant to be an emotional one. It was meant to be a tearjerker. But if you look at these kind of across the board, you've got Rocket Mortgage featuring a lead African-American actor. You've got Alexa, again, featuring African-American lead actor. You've got Toyota going with a disabled athlete. Kenny, this is a good spot, I think, to bring you in. Like, is that diversity and inclusion? Is that what we're seeing? Or are we just seeing kind of hero stories where they're convenient? Like, what's your perspective on these?
To me personally, I feel like it's checking off boxes. Sadly, this industry has suffered with this problem for decades, for beyond decades, right? So even when we look at the statistics of the percentage of minority art directors that participate in the Super Bowl, it was 7%. So it's like, come on, man, like this is absolutely freaking ridiculous. But the percentages have always been bad, since the inception of the Super Bowl in regards to people of color working behind the scenes. So like, me seeing like the Tracy Morgans and definitely, the homie Michael B. Jordan in the spot, like I'm like, cool. But I'm like, I want to know who was working behind the scenes and who was like, yeah, let's put them in there, because outside of the Super Bowl, we see advertising agencies, PR agency of the like tripping over their shoelaces, trying to be more diverse and getting it all wrong. So yeah. like I'm like, okay, cool. You got a couple of brown faces in there. Great. But like, who's really making the decisions? Who's cashing the checks at the end of the day? Who's getting the credit at the end of the day? Right. So who's high-fiving it over Zoom this morning? Like, that's what I really want to know.
Yeah, and who is high-fiving it over Zoom? I mean, that is the question. That's one of the things we want to dig into, right? Because how do we gauge success for these things? I mean, I've been in the agency room. Shiv, I know you've been kind of on all sides, right? You've been inside of big brands. You're at a large brand now. You've kind of moved between them, but in between, you've kind of been in the agency world as well. And you have that sort of shared perspective also. And I wonder, when you think about that from the perspective of a brand marketer, what would you see? How would you describe a win? Is it like an ad that people are talking about? Is it something that, like, Mountain Dew did that whole competition where they said, count the number of bottles in our ad, and if you count it correctly, or I guess get close to the number, like you could win $1 million. I'm guessing they had a lot of people enter that. I haven't actually looked at the trades to see like how many people did enter, but like, is that the success if it's like a sweepstakes style thing where it's like, oh, we had 1 million people tweet this out not because they bought Mountain Dew Melon or because they want to drink it, but because they counted the bottles because they want to win $1 million. Like, is that it? Is that what we are aiming for?
So Rohit, this is such a good conversation, and it really reminds me of this one time when I was at PepsiCo, well before I was at Visa, where the Super Bowl happened. We had an ad in the Super Bowl. It was me and 5 others who really drove it on the brand side. And it was the morning after, and we were flying back to Purchase, New York, and the head of the North America PepsiCo business had given us a lift in the corporate jet. So we were all excited, sitting there in the back. And the plane had terrible Wi-Fi. And I was refreshing my screen again and again to see the USA Today results, because they were just about coming out at the time. And as they came out, the North America CEO happened to walk to the back of the PepsiCo plane, as it was called, the PepsiCo One, and he was like so what's up? How did we do? Do you have your job or have you lost it? And he was just messing with me, but it still made me a little uncomfortable. And I had to remind him, and he was a really good guy, that when we went into that particular year for the advertising, we looked at the entire spectrum, and the spectrum is captured, I think, by Rocket Mortgage on one end, the formula that they played with. I mean, that's a quintessential Super Bowl ad. I would go to the extent of saying that designed to win the USA Today ad meter. Whether it does anything else for the brand and achieves other objectives, I don't know. I missed the first few seconds of that ad because my 9-year-old was feeling hungry. And because I missed the first few seconds, I really didn't get the ad until I watched it later on in the day. So questionable of how really strong and impactful it was if you weren't paying attention. And then the other end of the spectrum is what that Toyota ad represented. And the aspirational feel, it's not about the product, it's not about product features and benefits. It's about true deep brand building in the aspirational way. Now, which does better, which does more for the business, which drives better business metrics? I think it's time will tell, but what I would say is my hunch and my senses for the time that we're in, we're looking for messages and meaning that brings us together, that gives us more hope. And with that in mind, the ads that were more in that genre, the Toyota one being a perfect example, I suspect will serve their brand better in the long term. And serve them better means drive brand health, that in turns, directly drives business performance.
Yeah, it's interesting that one of the things that seems to happen with a lot of these ads is this debate between, do we focus on the story, as Toyota chose to do, in which case they don't show any of their cars at all, versus what GM did with a storyline, very funny, of Will Ferrell kind of talking about how Norway is kicking America's butt in electric vehicles purchase, and he's very angry about that, and he goes and recruits all of these other actors to go, but they're driving the cars, and you see the cars as part of the ad. Should the product be in the ad? Does it need to be in the ad? Like, is that an important thing that people are forgetting? Gavin, go back to you for this one. I'm sure you've been in the room debating this, where you've kind of been story first or product first or both.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to love the brands that can get away with the storytelling without putting the product in it, but you really need to nail what that aspiration is, that idea, that higher order, the arete, to geek out for a second, right? The Greeks talked about the highest kind of state you can become, where you're fully kind of in line with the truth. I like the idea of Toyota. By the way, disclosure, Toyota is a very big former client of mine. We did some Olympic work with them. But I agree with Shiv. This is the other end of the spectrum. This is almost, don't even talk about the strategy. The optimism of that woman, adopting a young girl from Siberia who's about to lose her legs, is about as poignant and as vulnerable as the world gets. And still, it's a message of hope. We're going to come together. We're going to get beyond this. That message is super powerful. Toyota is strong enough as the largest car manufacturer in the world today. But the idea that over time they have built that idea, that trades on, a half a dozen big executions on huge stages to almost be a light touch. Whereas, to David's point, that Rocket Mortgage ad has to bring away top of mind awareness and drive some level of interest, intent, if not outright, I want to refinance my home. So it just is a kind of interesting study in contrasts.
Yeah. And you do see, quite a bit of new product launches oriented towards it. And one of the ads that was a favorite, I think partially because of the actor in it, was the Doritos ad for 3D Doritos. And it had Matthew McConaughey. The Cheetos ad also, which you just saw, is another great one that has kind of big actors. It was so funny because the Doritos one, and Shiv, you were talking about watching it with your kids. I was watching it with my kids. And when we finished watching this one, my son said, so Doritos is literally advertising that they make you fat. And I'm like, that's an interesting perspective, but pretty true. I mean, he eats the 3D chips and he becomes 3D now, and now he's fat. But Morgan, I wonder if you could talk about just, Cheetos, Doritos, M&Ms. I mean, these are things that we generally like, even if we're trying to be on a diet, like we eat those during the Super Bowl. I try not to eat them any other time, right? But like, you know, during the Super Bowl, you can pretty much eat whatever you want. We let our kids eat. Well, at least we do. Maybe we're bad parents, but like, you know, it's a Super Bowl. It's a special occasion. Do those work to drive that awareness? And is the 3D, this is a prognostication for the future, is the 3D Dorito chip going to be around 6 months from now?
More classic.
Yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Those are definitely more classic Super Bowl ads. I found them both really enjoyable, and it's interesting. You know, my partner also was in advertising, and he hated the Matthew McConaughey ad. And I
but does he hate McConaughey? Is it like because of him? Is it like a hating on McConaughey thing?
Who knows?
You know it is.
It could be. It could be. Maybe I watch his movies a little too often. But yeah, you know, I think those ads really did a nice job of bringing fun and enjoyment. And I think actually the difference between what M&M's did and really tying a little bit more to cultural relevance of what happened in the last year and kind of bringing some of those moments in. Their brand is really based in fun. And I think they did a nice job of bringing that joy, having, you know, Dan Levy and that actor in there. I think he in particular stands for a lot of things that people can relate to and brings a lot of positivity. And so I think looking at how they executed it versus Doritos or Cheetos, which really went more just the fun, you know, funny, quirky. I mean, bringing in Shaggy was hilarious with that song. And I think the point they're trying to make and kind of sticking to their brand story of, you know, the fingerprints it leaves behind. And that is something that just is really to the core of Cheetos. And that's something that I think brings a little bit of nostalgia to the consumer base as well. So I think they all did a nice job. I'd probably give Cheetos and M&M's the win for that one over Doritos, but I thought they were all enjoyable.
I don't know, that orange finger thing. I get confused whether that's a Cheetos thing or a Doritos thing. I mean, logically it happens for both, but like I never remember like which brand is doubling down on the orange finger. So like, but maybe they're owned by the same people. I don't remember. So maybe it doesn't matter.
There's something to seeing those celebrity couples as well. You know, I think people really like to see them, you know, in real life, even if it's not real and it's a commercial. I think that's a strategy that we saw more than once.
Ashton Kutcher singing was definitely real because it was pathetic. So, you know, I don't think they could have fixed it, and they clearly didn't because his singing was bad. So that is authentic. I mean, that's one way to demonstrate authenticity. Like, let the dude sing as badly as he probably sings in real life.
Absolutely.
Sure. That's one strategy, right? All right. Well, we've talked about some of the big brands, but one of the things that happens at every Super Bowl is you have challenger brands, you have small brands, you have unknown brands. And there were a couple that really stood out in terms of what they ended up doing. There was Dr. Squatch soap, which I think I'm clearly part of the target audience because I'd seen those ads on social media before. But for a lot of people, they hadn't. And this was like this natural soap. And it was a cut down part of their overall kind of Instagram ad that they showed as part of their overall thing. You had Oatly, which is a fast growing brand of oat milk. And this ad that I think was the CEO singing a song that he wrote himself that was actually banned in Sweden and recorded like 6 years ago. And they kind of brought it back and they did it as an ad. And then they predictably thought that, well, people will either love it and have it in their head or they'll hate it. And so they created a series of t-shirts to allow people to talk about how much they hated it, which is another strategy to go. And then you had Reddit, which was probably the most unique marketing strategy of the entire games, where they had a 5-second ad that you clearly didn't have enough time to read. But if you actually went and looked at it, and let's leave this up on screen for a little bit, just so people can actually read it while we talk about it, you would actually get the entire story. And they referenced why Reddit has been in the news lately, which is all about the power of this subreddit group and how people responded to that and really shifted the stock market fortunes of GameStop. That was in contrast to Robinhood, which was a platform that allows a lot of this day trading that got into a lot of trouble because they stopped that day trading. They didn't mention any of that during their ad. So, David, let's go to you to talk about this kind of challenger strategy of these brands that you've never heard of. Is that, you know, are those the winners? Are they the ones that basically you get these brands who nobody's ever heard of and they do a Super Bowl ad and now everybody knows what Dr. Squatch soap is? Like, is that a winning ad? or not?
Well, I like what you were saying about how there was enough of that lead in for Dr. Squatch, and what's also what is also easy to forget is that so many of these ads, they're going to be successful or not based on what happens after and even to some degree before. And so, how well are they building, how well do they build that brand, where Dr. Squatch can go and just have a million different takes on exactly what they did. Oatly has a totally different campaign. I mean, they created that ad nearly a decade ago for another country, and great for them to be able to get more mileage out of it. There's a bit of that controversy. Banned in Sweden bans anything. Who knew, right? Who knew they have a dairy lobby in Sweden? You thought that was just an American thing. But yeah, so good on them to do it. But they can't do a million different cuts. It's just they've got their 24-hour cycle, sell a few T-shirts, and then it's back to their own. It's still in that ethos of them being this just making fun of their own advertising, so it fits. Dr. Squatch would do this all day long, and they're probably going to get a lot more mileage out of the Instagram cuts of those ads. I mean, the Reddit piece was brilliant in conjunction with Robinhood, which is I did a poll last night on Twitter during the game, and I was asking which was just the biggest mistake made during the Super Bowl. Was it Robinhood advertising at all, and yes, I'm looking at Kenny, so I'm sorry, but was it NFL talking about being anti-racist and not referencing Copernic, right? So it's like two huge, clearly not oversights, because pretty damn obvious to everyone involved. But there's some really big issues going on that relate to all this.
Yeah, and let's pop that open now. Let's go with a kind of full-fledged debate here now about the best and the worst. And Kenny, maybe you can weigh in here just on your perspective, and then I want to hear from everybody else. What stood out for you as the best or the worst? What would you like to see more of or less of?
So much bad, it's hard to pick. I mean, I just want to skip back to what Gavin was talking about. I think Gavin was talking about earlier. He was talking about the Doritos. Not was it Doritos? Yeah, I guess it was the Dorito spot. Someone was talking about Dorito spot, so I apologize if I got the name wrong. But the thing with Doritos in particular that I see every year, it's that either it's the inmates running the asylum or they actually hire a real advertising person to work on this stuff, right? So when I saw it this year, I was like, oh, so they actually paid someone.
Yeah, as opposed to the consumer generated stuff they've done in the past, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, personally, I like the consumer generated, even though some of the consumer generated stuff I thought was horrible too. But at least you're giving the power back to the consumer to come up with whatever the hell they want to. But then, but then when you compare it to what some of our brothers and sisters in the industry make, you're like, well, damn, you could have just went to to South Florida and hired a bunch of 18-year-olds to make the same stuff instead of paying these cats Lord knows how much they got in fees to make something like that. So
yeah, at least their passion for Doritos would be real in that case, right?
Yeah, because because the thing about because you asked, are 3D Doritos going to be around in 6 months? Yeah, to people that smoke weed, they're definitely going to be around.
But will they actually be the 3D Doritos, or will they just be regular Doritos that they visualize differently?
I mean, I think anyone that created 3D Doritos smokes weed. Just that's my opinion.
Kenny, just to add something to that, not on the weed side of the conversation, but on what you said earlier, so what's fascinating about what Doritos has done with the UGC campaign over the years, not this year, but in preceding years, is that thing drove serious business results. It won the USA Today ad meter time and again. It was ranked always really high, but I would see the internal numbers and I'd see them with a lot of envy. It just worked for that brand. like from a pure strict business performance, and super impressive.
So like Shiv, why? I mean, that became their unique thing. Like no other brand could really have done UGC in the same way because it would have been copying them. Why wouldn't they keep doing it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had left by the time they stopped doing it, and there's always a lot of theories. One is probably the belief that the idea was getting stale. The second is the marketing leadership changed, which is sometimes a factor as well. There was also more senior leadership that changed too. And then maybe the feeling that this next year it would not work, that, you know, things had changed in culture. So there are always a lot of reasons. And this is where, I mean, I've seen this time and again, it's such a complex process inside the brands because it's such a high stake game, and you can't hide behind anything if the plays you run turn out to be failures.
Yeah. Well, I wanna go to. I actually really want to hear Morgan's take on her worst, if you're willing to go there, because sometimes it's fun to dissect what was bad, and I would love to hear that from you, and I'd love to hear that from Gavin too, frankly.
Yeah, I'm an optimist, so I would have much rather talked about my favorites, but
but that's less interesting. Come on.
I know. You know, I wasn't a fan of the Shift for Shop. I thought for something that's so massive of sending, you know, everyday people to space, I thought it was a little bit of a letdown. You don't really know what the brand was doing.
For thing.
Yeah, inspiration4.com.
Yep.
So that to me, you know, I feel like there was a lot of buzz around that going into the Super Bowl, and you know, I forgot who said this, but similarly, I didn't watch anything before the Super Bowl. I wanted to make sure I kind of saw it fresh. So you know, it just kind of glossed over. It didn't catch my attention, and it's a really big deal. And I think there's so much that, you know, any creative could have done with that. So that to me was one of the worst, actually. You know, I think the Stella Artois one as well for me was a little bit of a miss, talking about the $1 billion heartbeat. I don't think people really, to me, I didn't connect to it. I thought, you know, I just started thinking about billionaires, and, you know, I don't feel like a billionaire on any day. So that to me, I think strategically was a little bit of a miss as well.
Yeah, some of them, when they're misses, they do seem like missed opportunities. Gavin, what about you? What stood out as particularly bad in your opinion?
So I am humbled by the fact that when you're asked to be critical, you do become critical. And it was interesting last night to see the just outright kind of attack. I do think it was a different year. I do think we need to almost give a different lens on judging these things because of that, right? To the larger points made, I love UGC and I'm all about, you know, putting those consumers in the center. But I agree. I think there probably was a hesitation. This is not the year to give the brand and the narrative to a larger crowd because it's just so unpredictable. And first rule is you don't hurt the brand in any way or shape or form, whether it's, you know, an intentional big budget ad, which clearly the McConaughey flat was. I don't know that I'd put that in the best, but I definitely wouldn't put it in. You know, it almost to me was in the middle, as expensive as it was. The ads that were a little frustrating to me were things like the Will Ferrell ad, because again, we joked before this started that we all look at ads a little differently, right? And clearly when you work in the business, you have no choice but to see things through very different lens. I thought the concept was funny. I thought Will was winning. I mean, again, Funny or Die is almost a variation on him just kind of groggily getting out of his pajamas to talk to somebody at the door when it was, you know, the 2-year-old little girl. The idea that the brand promise at the center of that ad was in 4 years, GM is going to have an electric fleet. Now,
after denying it for a long time. I mean, if you know the history of like what the brand has done, like they've been dragged to the electric vehicle space.
Exactly. Versus the Teslas, which break a new record every day, and Elon saying he'll now accept Bitcoin for the new vehicles. The idea that GM's best bet hidden within that very expensive ad is in 4 years, we'll have a credible fleet. I have a GM in my driveway and that hurts, right? Like, come on, right? Like, let's find something better to do or better to say, because if you dig into it, the ad doesn't make that truth any less true or untrue, right? So, you know, and again, I know I probably have a little bit more of a more critical take for, you know, a specific reason. The other thing that I thought, you know, by contrast was the Pringles ad, I thought could have been fun, but became more irrelevant the more it went on. The entire world is worried about how they stack their Pringles. Again, you work in the world of CPG. Hopefully there's some larger truth. If stacking Pringles is the largest truth they can come up with from a product benefit standpoint, I'm going to short that stock today, right? Like that to me feels like a much bigger challenge. And I don't mean to be arch to be nasty, but that to me was an idea that they should have kept pushing beyond because the strategic legs weren't there. I also didn't necessarily like the Squatch. I apologize, I don't remember the product name, but
Dr. Squatch.
It felt like Dollar Shave Club 2021, right? Like almost shot for shot, frame for frame, personality, quirky, equity. We're just crazy internet startup guys with a trailer full of fill in the blank. That I've seen that formula before.
Well, so there's one I'm surprised hasn't come up yet, and that's Cure Auto Insurance. Right? So you look at Amazon, which did sex very well, right? Yeah. Steamy ad, almost wanted to hide that from my kid, and I'm glad she didn't get all the innuendo. That I mean, just beautiful ad, and look, just even celebrating just celebrating beauty in such a purely like black ad, like it's great. It just works on a lot of levels, and then you have this and like this whip it out spot, like how the hell do you go there? Post everything, we finally got the whip it out guy out of the White House, and now we have talk about something that just feels so anachronistic, and I could just wish that there were some just some kind of approval process, and we're just not even going to take the money this year. It doesn't matter how much you pay us. It's just not we're not going to do this shit anymore. So I was really surprised to see that one.
Yeah. And that reminds me, David, I actually want to go back to your earlier comment. For me, the worst, without a doubt, and this might be because of where I am, was that Robin Hood ad. And I say that because it was so completely tone deaf about what's going on with them, what's going on in culture, what good, bad role they play at times. And it really grated with me because it represented in many ways the worst of Silicon Valley. When you think you know what's best for the rest of the country, you ignore any criticism, any feedback, and you just keep marching ahead. And it really had all of that together. And I thought as a result, I wouldn't say it was the worst. I thought it was just sad because it reminded me of what some other tech companies do at times as well.
Yeah.
Well, we had Reddit take that from them, right? Reddit literally played Robin Hood to Robin Hood. It was phenomenal. I didn't love the execution, right? If we talk feed first, I want to see the headline of that or animate it and tell me there's more to find. And maybe I'm just now a stickler for how storytelling formatting. If I have to go back and screenshot it, they lose a couple points there. But I thought the strategy of that and just the idea of the little guy taking a shot, they took the Robin Hood strategy and did it in real time. I thought that was brilliant. And that was only a local buy, I think, in the top 5 days.
Yeah. But you're right, Gavin. They did it the right way for sure.
Yeah. It was a fantastic real-time kind of contrast.
Yeah.
Well, we are running short on time. We have a few minutes left, and there are so many ads that we haven't talked about. But I want to do kind of a very quick round robin of some of the ads that I would love to get this panel's thoughts on. There were several that were in the liquor and alcohol space. Michelob did their ad around just their organic seltzer, I think it was, and they had Don Cheadle in that, and a bunch of fake celebrities, and so they pulled off like the fake celebrities and the real celebrities. You had Anheuser Busch doing a ad across beer just to get people to hey, let me buy you a beer, and across all of their brands. And I wonder if that is something that all of you think is successful in the sense of Frito-Lay had an ad across all of their chips. Marshawn Lynch was reading the story, and they had all these NFL players featured in there, including the 49ers players, legendary players, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. And the ad was just about chips, which is what they make. and what people eat during the Super Bowl. Like, is that type of ad where you spread it across so many different brands that you own a good use of $5.5 million? Because at least you can spread it across lots of different brands.
I was just glad there was no horses. I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah, well, the horses are kind of tired. Although they did have that Sam Adams ad before, I think it was before the game, where they sort of pointed a little bit of fun at, at the horses. And I think we do have some comments coming in as well from people watching just about their favorite ads as well. So I know we've got like a few minutes left and we've got so many different ones, but like, here's a comment. Here's a question. So I'd love to know what the panel thinks of the Jeep ad. So for people who didn't see that, it was I think the original, or maybe even they aired it as like a 2-minute long ad featuring Bruce Springsteen talking about the middle. And the middle was the middle of the country and how we could reunite the country. And Bruce Springsteen was sort of the spokesperson for that. So open question, hit, miss, Jeep's ad around the middle. What do you think?
I'll go ahead. I liked the ad. I liked the whole reunited America message. It reminded me of Imported from Detroit. The same CMO had driven that one. However, it felt a little bit like a politician running for president. We're going to bring the country together, purple states.
Which is the last thing anybody wants to see anymore. I mean, no more politicians.
Totally. And here's the interesting thing. I looked at that in contrast to the Anheuser-Busch ad, which was like, let's just get a beer together. And fundamentally, they're actually hitting at the same message, which is, we're just people, we should hang out, we should talk, blah, blah, blah. Anheuser-Busch did a much better job, in my view, of pushing that forward. You got to take the politics out of it. Granted, it was a corporate ad. It doesn't push any specific brand forward. But as a corporate message, I'd give them a lot of brownie points for that.
Yeah, Gavin, you wanted to say something?
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say, I thought the Jeep ad was good. I agree. I think it felt a little too, let's just come together, and with respect, the boss is great. But when I think of him in the center, I think of Asbury Park, and maybe it's just because it's 100 miles away. The idea that Jeep became a little recessive, to me, to your larger point, Rohit, I thought Cadillac nailed their strategy. A guy who literally doesn't have hands, pushing a button, and the benefit is clearly driven by product. I am a little bit old school in that regard. When product as hero effortlessly and elegantly pays off the core premise, that money is well spent. And oh, by the way, that's where it's worth spending millions of dollars to get Winona, to get the rights to Edward Scissorhands, to cast Timothy Chalamet, right? The idea that those three things lined up to probably a $10 million stack before you wrote the check for the ad. That's somebody who's getting promoted or at least reevaluated today, because the bravery of that spot hitting the strategy, to me, was the clear winner from just an overall kind of macro standpoint.
Yeah, and you can sort of picture, anybody who's been in the agency world, you can picture that brainstorming room where the brief is, we got to promote hands-free driving. Who is the ultimate person who could use hands-free driving? Edward Scissorhands, right? So like that makes sense. Or, like you look at the strategy behind Hellman's and what they did with Amy Schumer, and like how you could whip up anything and just slap some mayo into it. And although the fairy god mayo was kind of a stretch, like that whole thing, the product was right in the middle. Versus if you look at what T-Mobile did, they had a celebrity packed ad, and they were talking about what mistakes can happen when you have a spotty network. And like, that just didn't make sense. Like, are they saying that all these celebrities don't have T-Mobile and therefore they have a spotty network, or that they're on T-Mobile and they have a spotty network? And like, why wouldn't they be on T-Mobile if they're in a T-Mobile ad? Like that none of that made any sense. So there's where like, it was a fun story, but it didn't make sense, because like, are they saying that their network is crap? Which is obviously not the message they want to give. Or are they saying that all these celebrities who they paid to be in their ad are on a different network, which is also a stupid message? So like that type of thing, you kind of see this underlying thing. You're like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense.
Well, T-Mobile and Verizon both managed to maybe the most impossible task this year, and that's make people even more confused about 5G.
Yeah. My son actually said, so which one is lying? They both are saying the same thing.
Yeah. You're like, son, they're both lying. Welcome to Super Bowl marketing. Yeah. And, it's, there were so many ads that talk about, 5G, better Wi-Fi. Like there was Infinity that was like, get gig Wi-Fi. And you're like, well, is gig Wi-Fi better than 5G? Like, doesn't the G stand for gig? Therefore, like 5 gig would be better than gig Wi-Fi. Why do I only have 1 gig, right? Like, that's at home. That should be more gigs. And so, like, you're right. This whole thing was so confusing.
And if the benefit is not clear, how are you going to tell a story about it, right? I mean, that's the thing. You're talking about a dream that is Rome, but I don't know what it's like to get high-speed download, except in the best day on this device. This device here, somebody on the panel, Morgan, you had to jump onto your phone, right? The idea that technology hasn't freed us from the idea of one form of high-speed internet versus another, that's a failure of multiple verticals, not just the media, right? That's trying to build the proposition.
Yeah, and the only brand that I think actually did a decent job of bringing that message to life in a human way was Cox, with their spot where they showed all of these healthcare workers who went into that room and their moms had made them one of their favorite meals to just say, hey, I know you've been working insane hours because of the pandemic. And like, it had heart to it. And it showed that in those situations, when you're having that conversation from across the world with your parents, that's when you really just need the internet to work. I don't care if it's 5G or 2G or whatever. Like, as long as it doesn't break down and I can still see them and hear them, that's what you care about. And to me, like, that was one of the few ads that actually reminded us of that. So, all right, well, we are very close to being out of time. There are, like, let me see if we went through. I have like a long here. There's my like crazy long list of like what I wanted to talk about with all of you. Tide, Jason Alexander sweatshirt. Good, not good. What do you think?
I loved it. And that might be controversial, but I thought they did such a great job with, just bringing, especially in 2020, when we're all thinking about germs in a completely heightened sense or heightened way. I think that even just using his expressions on the sweatshirt to call attention to these little things that we do on a daily basis, wiping our phones on our sweater and then not thinking about, hopefully this is more for teenagers than adults at this point, but for those of us with kids, I think, seeing those different reactions, really calling attention to that and doing it in a fun way. I thought they nailed it. They've nailed it the last couple of years, so good on them.
Yeah, it's sorry, what'd you say, Gavin?
No, I'm sorry. I just said I like the concept. I guess I give it to the mom to being more in that nurturing mindset. I didn't necessarily go to the benefits of Tide. Jason Alexander wins just making faces, right? But the idea that Tide to me got a little lost in the benefit, and I know it's about what's imminently going to stain it, so I get it, but again, on the watching of it, it was more the entertainment of it than the product benefit, but it could literally just be, like everything, your experience may vary.
Well, and it's hard to imagine that anybody could come up with a new tagline around detergent, but their tagline, which was something like, it's dirtier than you think, was actually pretty clever, I thought, because like a lot of times, we know that we should wash our underwear, but like how often do you wash a sweatshirt, right? Because it's like on top of other clothes. So you think that, okay, maybe I don't need. So like that did seem like a pretty interesting strategic one, at least as a tagline. So, all right, I think we have pretty much made it through all of the ads that I wanted to talk about, except for one that when I watched it caused me to get more excited than I should have, which was the spot for Coming to America 2, which is coming out, which I actually didn't know about. I guess I should have, because they've announced it apparently before. But like, that was the first time that I saw that there was a Coming to America 2. And I literally was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So I was way too excited about that one, but probably just because I hadn't known that was coming out. So anyway, that's on me. I don't think that was particularly good.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was pretty impressed with the Paramount commercials, in the sort of entertainment space, and I thought that was clever and how it tied in with their logo and all of that stuff. But when I saw this one, I was like, whoa, this is news.
Yeah, this is news. Exactly.
One. Yeah.
That's the reaction. And you're right, Paramount Plus. I didn't realize until I went and looked it up afterwards that Paramount Plus streaming is actually what All Access CBS is becoming. I thought it was something different. So I'm like, well, I guess Paramount is like, together with CBS, but like, is that gonna, because I saw all the Star Trek stuff, but now that makes sense. It's like, okay, that's the new version. So yeah, the streaming wars are full on in 2021. That is for sure. So any final thoughts before we let everyone go with this panel of the best and worst of Super Bowl marketing and advertising? Any final thoughts? Any other ads that were on your radar that we did not get to talk about yet? All right. Looks like we talked about every single one. So I want to say thank you to everyone. We've got a comment here, a newsletter. So today's discussions helped him with his own marketing strategies. Awesome. Very glad to hear that, Corey. Thank you for watching and listening. Thank you to my panelists, Gavin, Kenny, Shiv, Morgan, and David. Thank you for sharing all of your insights and wisdom. I really appreciate all of you. If any of you are not familiar with anybody on this panel, you should be following them. Follow them on Twitter. Go and check out their work, their writing, their branding activities. They are all phenomenal minds, and I only got to tap a little bit of the potential of what's in their heads. So definitely go and follow all of them. Thank you to this panel.
Thank you, Rohit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. This has been a special episode of the Non-Obvious Insights Show. We are usually live every Thursday to talk about the most interesting and non-obvious people and what they are doing in the world. Every week we interview a new personality about non-obvious ideas and put those out into the world. So join us every Thursday at noon Eastern. I'm your host, Rohit Bhargava. And for now, I will just leave you with a reminder to always stay non-obvious.